Hi everyone, again. Um, welcome to the Keynote for Radius Collective. Really quick, I'm going to introduce Vaishnavi Kumar and Sarah Cadigan Fried, who are the last two members of Radius who unfortunately are not with us in person today. But they've so kindly orchestrated our keynote. And so they're going to take the lead on that, and then we'll jump in person towards the end, and then have time for question and answers after that. So, without further ado, feel free to take it away.
All right, thank you so much. It's really exciting to be here and welcome to the Radius Collective 2026 Prompts Workshop. We're really excited to help kick off the residency weekend for y'all. I am really disappointed that Vaish and I can't be there. I know how exciting it is when you have all been far apart and now you're all together. And we really appreciate you letting us crash your weekend digitally for a minute before you start getting hands-on and doing things you certainly couldn't have done from afar. So, anyways, I'm Sarah Cadigan Freed. I'm a Boston-based member of the Radius Collective, and I'm joined by Vaish, also a Boston-based member. And we are going to give you an introduction to who we are and how we work together. Here we go. So, Radius Collective is a creative body of artists and designers focused on critical discourse around identity, place, and connection. I'm sure you all had a heads up that there was going to be an art collective here with you, but you may have wondered what exactly is an art collective. So, technically, an art collective is a group of artists who work together with a shared objective to create art. The collective may share ideas, resources, authorship, to produce a body of works, or exhibitions, distributions. It could be historical, social, political, or cultural commentary. A popular example is the Guerrilla Girls, an anonymous group of female feminist artists who work to fight racism and sexism in the art world. But realistically, as an art collective, what are the moving parts and pieces that go into achieving what we achieve? For us, being in a collective generally means that we meet on Zoom every few months with a shared goal of creating at least one fairly large scale exhibition, publication, and or workshop each year. Usually, as soon as one event is done, we start planning and brainstorming the next move. Obviously, as an exhibition approaches, we are all working to conceptualize, plan, and create the artwork that makes up said exhibition, but a lot of other work goes into these things that you might not think about, and we're going to talk about those things today as well. For example, for each exhibition, we spend time considering spaces to approach, people to work with, promotional material, a concept or a prompt to our work, a thread to hold the exhibition together, not to mention the fact that we all live in different places far flung around the world, as you will hear about. So, exhibitions or workshops tend to require at least some amount of serious travel and planning. When you think about all of the moving parts that go into what we do, you can see that really an art collective is basically a long-term collaboration. It is empowering to work with a team that can achieve so much more than any one of us could achieve on our own. For example, this talk. I was a little daunted, to be honest, about presenting a speech of this length and size and coming up with the time to put it all together. But Vaish and I decided to do it together. We wrote it together. We're presenting together. Pam made a lot of the slides that you're seeing. And ultimately, we've been having fun doing it rather than the alternative. So, who are we as a collective?
Um, I can jump in. The photo that you see on the left before we actually introduce our collective is from our very first show. We were all um, baby collective members. And we had just started, this was at the end of the first show, and we were really excited because it felt like we were, on the brink of something really fun and unique and great like series of opportunities for all of us to grow through together. Um, so who is Radius Collective? The very basis is using the symbolic and literal form of a line. Radius Collective is a creative body of artists and designers focused on critical discourse around identity, place, and connection. We have a very layered approach. Our work is multidisciplinary. We have work spanning graphic design, information design, sculpture, fiber arts, photography, paper cut art, audio visual installations, and sound design. And what's really exciting too is that while we all kind of have our niches, we also dip into each other's crafts in some way or shape or form. There's a lot of cross collaboration. There's a lot of just exploring different mediums and like trying different things. We were founded in 2019 by Josh Datweiler. We're currently 9 artists strong for this round. We're spread across the US and Europe, and we span 3 different nationalities. We've produced 5 exhibitions, 1 publication, thank you, COVID, and we've had many visiting artist collaborations over the years. And this event with all of you is our 6th collaboration, so we're super excited to partner with you on it. When I say visiting artist, just a quick note, we, over the years, with all of the different shows we've had, we've invited artists to join for that particular round. A lot of times it's on the basis of, what is our goal for the show? Who could, be a really great voice to add on to our collective for this round, and bring in a really unique perspective. So we've been able to collaborate with a lot of different artists, which has been great. Most of us met at Boston University, where we got our MFA in graphic design. Over the years, we've been fortunate to meet more artists outside of this cohort, expand our network, and just practice together. So, take it away, Sarah.
Yes, so I wanted to talk about what we do to define our work as a collective, what sort of ties it all together. And from the very beginning, we've always been very collaborative. With concepts rooted in the symbolic and literal form of line, our work has taken shape into a unique exhibition each year, moving across different galleries in the US and Europe. How do we do this with such varied interests and skill sets? As you'll hear, we all sort of have a different medium, really, for how we work. The key is in the name collective. Like any good relationship, we rely on trust and open communication. We lean on each other for support, ideas, and resources at all stages of the creative process. No idea is bad. We work together to identify our shared and individual goals, and we continue sort of the groundwork of critique that we all learned in grad school. Teamwork is as important as individual work in our collective, and the process reveals our strengths. It pushes us to upskill and empowers us to be better people in the creative world. At the start of each round, we spend several hours brainstorming over Zoom meetings to identify our concept, talk about art and exhibitions that have inspired us since the last meeting. We share new work and critique it. We discuss new goals that we may have or new connections that we've made. Most of us come from a design background, as Vaish mentioned. A lot of us met in school for design, which means that as artists, our making is rooted in conceptual thinking. One thing that makes us work well together is that we're all inspired by the constraints of a prompt. That being the case, we usually start a new project by coming up with keywords, prompts, and/or concepts first. Once our concept is strong, we begin reaching out to galleries. There are a few ways to go about this. Tapping into our local networks has worked well for us in the past. Making connections at local galleries and university spaces is really key to being able to put on an exhibition every year. We also look into what open opportunities might be actively available near any of our members. And we sometimes even apply to galleries that, might not be familiar with our work, but that we think would be a good fit. And that can be really exciting too.
Yeah, and once we have our concept nailed down and we have a target date and a location that we know we're working with, we that's when we start working backwards. So a lot of, again, because we're all so widely spread out and we're so many members, we really have to be on top of our scheduling. So we work backwards to establish a good schedule for meetings, to talk about work that we produced, what stages we're at, set updates, dates for updates on the work, but also all of the logistical stuff that we're trying to plan. And a really big part of this process is shipping work to a gallery. Like, I think all of us have definitely had to improvise. A lot of times, you start, depending on what your medium is, you start thinking big, and then you have to kind of pare back a little bit or really be intentional and practical with the way that your work is being packaged up. Is it something that can be easily transported to a different city or a different country, which has happened in our case? Shout out to Kristen and Molly and Masi for installing in Italy. But just thinking about how does our work ship, what kind of materials would we need, what kind of tech would we need? All of that is a really big part of just planning. And a really great part about our collaboration is how collaborative we all are. We really divide our responsibilities into, logistics, organizing, communication, exhibition branding and assets, installation duties. And, oftentimes at least one or two members aren't able to be on site for installation. We're the people this time. But in which case there's a lot of like detailed instructions that are provided with the work. And then once the show is done, we debrief and reflect on takeaways for the next show. So that's kind of just how we work. But from a conceptual standpoint, if I can take the liberty to say this, and all of you feel free to jump in. Um, I think Radius Collective is kind of an ongoing thesis of our own individual practices. We have over the years seen our work evolve. We have seen the methods that we're using evolve. Somehow one project is loosely connected to the other, if not always directly. But we're really able to explore our own interests on a deeper level with a shared prompt as the foundation, and shared critique and conversation, like Sarah said. So, this really allows us to like test, experiment, study, and hone our craft. We have very different practices. We have very different professional careers as well. We have a lot of our members who are teaching. Some of us are in corporate world. Some of us are freelancing. There's just so many different pieces, but I think it brings in such unique perspectives, and collectively it just informs the way that we're just working on the culture of our collective, and it's been really great. So while we have many different practices and careers, the one thing that really grounds us is just the simple motivation to create something of impact. So by doing this individually, we're also doing this collectively. And then, oh, yep.
So yeah, you can see, as we've mentioned, we've been keeping up with doing about one exhibition a year, sort of all over the world, um, mostly the US, but we like to think of ourselves as global because we did have this show in Italy, as you could see in 2024, which was very exciting. And we have a number of international members. Um, my screen is covered by my face. Sorry. But now we're here in Texas with y'all, and we're so excited to be here. We are going to briefly walk you through each of these past projects, and you'll be able to see some of the work that we've done, both the exhibitions themselves and sort of the branding for those exhibitions. Um, I personally didn't join Radius Collective until 2022, although I remember attending the Lines Divide opening fondly as a civilian. So I will let Vaish walk you through the first few sections, and then will switch off.
Thanks, Sarah. So our very first show was Lines Divide. This was in Boston. It was in East Boston. at the Boston East Gallery. And we had a really, really fun show. We had a lot of different mediums. We had photography, sculpture, information design, and it was a really beautiful space that we had the opportunity to exhibit our work in. The concept was based on how lines are defined as a single point that extend infinitely in both directions. However, too often divisions threaten to break this continuous connection. So, how did we interpret that? And a lot of our work, as you'll see, is prompted by words that are in line with what a line is. We take on a lot of concepts that are rooted in like geometry, I want to say, and kind of build upon that conceptually and interpret it in our own ways. So this was some of the branding that we did. The really fun part about being designers in an art collective is that we all get to do a lot of branding for our shows and be as conceptual as we want with it. So this was the first year, and then we have these are some shots from the show. As you can see, it was a really big, beautiful space. Something else that we've done in our shows is have collaborative work. So sometimes members collaborate to create a piece together. This was a collaboration between Kristen Malia and Molly Haig. And it was a really cool interactive animation that was going. Yeah, so this was Lines Divide. Moving on to the next one, as all of us we were thrown into COVID, but we were all still interested in creating something and having a show of some kind. And obviously, a show wasn't possible. We were all spread in different parts. We couldn't really meet at all. So um, we decided to create a collaborative publication. And this was reso printed and distributed. Thank you, Josh, for spearheading that. But it was a really fun collaboration again. Um, sorry. It was a visual response to current social political issues at the time in the US. The artists and designers in our collective, we had a few other members at the time. We provided our thoughts and responses on identity, connection, and place. It was something that we were all really thinking about a lot, especially in context to what everyone was going through. And this was structured by our previous collaboration. So, in what we did in Lines Divide, we used as the basis for inspiration to create a new body of work. So we were reacting to each other's pieces. And the projects had a really wide variety of media from animation to photography to installation, revealing personal experiences, work process, and relevant research. And the really interesting challenge was to be able to explore all of these different mediums, but distill it into a publication.
So, our next project was actually in Texas, in Corpus Christi, which I have no idea how far that is from Austin, but it sounds magical. I wasn't able to go to this one, but I was participating in this one. This was the first exhibition that I was asked to join the collective. At least that was my understanding. I don't know actually if I was being asked to join or just be a guest, but I stuck around and I was a little intimidated to join. I really love the branding for this show, and I love how it looked on the window to the gallery. Um, Here's some work on the inside of the gallery. This exhibit was called Align, and it was an exercise in finding commonality between all the members of the Radius Collective, which was a great time to join because everyone was kind of reintroducing themselves to each other as a part of this. The final solution was an alignment of all the artists. In contrast to previous years, this project focused on positive emotions and the desire to unify. Each member conducted an interview with another member for 20 to 30 minutes, and each interview started with the same first question. What is the first thing you think about when you hear the word align? Each member then created 3 executions in response to the interview, as well as their own understandings as related to the word align. The person that I interviewed ended up having to leave the collective, and it had been such a fun interview, and I still am very sad that she had to leave. But I'm really glad that I came in time to work with her briefly. Our next project was Underline. And as we were setting up this talk, I like wanted to talk about Underline. I like set it up so I could talk about this one because it was my favorite of our exhibitions so far. But as I was working on it, I realized it's the only one where I was able to attend the opening. So I think I'm very biased because of that. So now I need to really prioritize that in the future, I think. But again, I loved the branding for this. I don't know if anyone in the collective has noticed, but I'm going to confess now that I've never worked on the branding for any of these because I'm too intimidated. Y'all always make the best stuff. I can't, I don't know. I don't want to be the weak link. But yeah, I really loved this exhibition. It was in Boston. Um, it was inspired by our individual research and artistic practice. So we created original work based on the observation of an underlying phenomenon. So the responses were an interactive piece of process sought to bring to focus occurrences that go unexamined in our daily lives. So sort of noticing some phenomenon and underlining it through our artwork. Um, yes, the opening is something we haven't talked about before. We talked about how we need to find a place to hold an exhibit, but then we also usually try to have some kind of opening or closing event, which involves promoting that as well as the exhibition itself and providing any kind of entertainment that we want to provide. And that's a really fun part of the collective as well.
Sarah, I'm just going to quickly say you're not the weak link. You should
Sorry.
definitely be branding with us. Um, I so this was the next show that we did in 2024. We had an opportunity to showcase our work in Rome, Italy. It was a really exciting opportunity, also because we got to involve our European-based members in like the actual installation and showcase our work in a completely different setup. Um, so this was based on the concept of a tangent, which is a straight line or a plane that touches a curve or curved surface at a point, but if extended, does not cross it at that point. So for us, this was an exhibition in Rome, which included a number of in-person and online workshops led by members of our collective. And in these workshops, we had a lot of different kinds of participation. We had participants write collaborative scores. They reacted to conceptual geometric prompts to create posters and explored overlooked curiosities of Rome. Um, and again, it was a very unique space that we worked in. I'll let Molly and Kristen chime in if you have any comments about the actual space where we installed. Uh, Sorry, not to put you on the spot, but if you have any comments, feel free to jump in.
Maybe don't mind. You should be fine with something.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
We
Now,
can,
yeah,
yeah.
now it's clear.
I'm
Yep.
given a mic. No, but as a quick chime in to what you're talking about with this space, one of the things that we often deal with are artist-led spaces. So there's spaces that require a lot of legwork, and in this case, we arrived there, and it was a space that definitely wasn't ready for us and needed some love. So that was like one example of a space that really you go in and you're like, okay, like what do we need? How do we prep the space so we can have the quality exhibition that we want? Which again, it's like the hardest part about working with spaces like this. but it also ends up being, I think, the most rewarding. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. And again, if you see the photo in the top right corner, that was another collaboration we had within oh, and on the bottom left as well with the visiting artist. But it's just really unique opportunities to again, blend different mediums and create unique installations um, that people get to interact with. So this was a really great opportunity for us. Following Tangent, we moved into our most recent show, Graphies. This was at UMass Lowell in Lowell, Massachusetts. And it was a really interesting repository of 9 studies in context and connection. So we leveraged a range of media. We had each artist record and represent their personal graphy. So exposing, memories, observations, or daily experiences that call for a closer look. So we had all of these different graphies that you see on the poster. This was the branding and some of these elements from each of our pieces. So prosopography is the study of names. We and some words we actually like created as well to, I believe, I want to say soccergraphy is a created name. But it's really we had a really great time being very experimental with this round. Again, we had a very unique, beautiful gallery space that allowed for a lot more uh, dimension with our pieces. I think a lot of us went bigger with our pieces and really utilized the floor really well. So these are some shots from that. Um, so we had, a range of things. We had critical explorations of old monuments, analysis of a new mom's wardrobe, study of family names, you know, asking unanswered questions about the meaning of home, moonlight rock sculptures, finding new context alongside documentation of the fight to preserve a community garden, and abstracted landscapes contrasted pattern knits. So a range of things. And since then, with all of the things that we've really gotten a chance to work on, we realized that we have also because our members are in education, there's so much that we like about the act of collaboration, and that's why we're really interested in doing workshops, and that's why we're really excited to partner with all of you and create something unique and site specific. Um, Before we get into Q&As and everything, we'd love to actually introduce members of our collective. Um, so we're gonna go in order of our last names, I believe. First, oh,
Destin. Hi, everyone. I introduced myself this morning, but I'll reintroduce myself. I'm James. I'm an equal part creative director, photographer, and within the collective, I would say I'm really kind of zoning in on my photography medium. So just some examples here, you can see pretty much all of them analog photography too. I just love the imperfection of film photography rather than digital. It just as a process that like really slows me down and get a lot more intentional of what I'm going to shoot. And I just love the kind of visual quality it gives as well in terms of color and nostalgia as well. So this is just a snapshot of some of the projects. What I love about working with Radius Collective too is the constant prompts that we're each kind of interrogating. Often like when you're working individually, it's sometimes difficult to self-motivate. So to have like a group collective where we're each kind of prompting each other, helping, discussing, you're not just in a vacuum alone. So I would very much encourage all of you to kind of work with your peers, team up, even if it's not a vast collective like we've created, just kind of have this buddy system where you're communicating within your community. That's it.
So Masi is in Berlin right now, he's not here, but he is a composer, sound engineer, sound artist, and educator. And he works a lot with Max, the software, and he's added some really interesting, mostly like sound-based pieces to our shows. The top line is a sort of screenshot of some back end of his work. This one is a really beautiful composition that he made, so it's an audio piece, but then he also sort of designed the visuals to go with it. And the bottom middle is a collaboration that we did where we developed a score together based on the Wikipedia definition of the word tangent and carried it out in parallel, like making visual responses in parallel, and we decided on some parameters, but we didn't look at the responses together until we completed them. So it ended up being this sort of 4-part composition. We also made a beautiful soundtrack to go with it. The example is sort of like a collaborative score.
Hi everyone, I'm Padmini Chandrasekaran, or I go by Pam mostly. And my work kind of utilizes like both abstract and kind of literal symbols to express kind of like daily minutiae, you know, like everything that I touched during an hour, everything that my kid touched during an hour, or all of the stuff in my closet that I've collected over the years. Like I'm really interested in how we can make these like basic overloads, things that are more interesting by presenting it all together. And in terms of the collective, it's really cool for me to see your work today because it reminds me of that time when you're kind of like still searching for what your through line is. It's a really cool opportunity, I feel, for grad school is to like discover the things you're interested in and how you can develop them into a more sustained practice. I feel like I didn't do that in grad school. Like it took me a minute, and what I love about what we've done as a collective is we kind of extended that like collaboration or sort of cohort experience that you have in grad school, and I feel I'm really able to kind of figure out my through line through these prompts that we've done together. And so I guess as like a takeaway, I would say definitely like lean on each other because I think sometimes people can see stuff in your work that you are not as aware of when you're really deep in it. And so like both your instructors and your peers can really give you a lot of insight about, you know, actually what are your interests, what's the repetition that keeps coming. Because that's what these
Hi, I'm Josh. I like my work, I guess, through the collective, it is a space to kind of do this more like creative studio practice, often has like social justice component to it, things that I don't find fit in like a traditional design background, which has a lot of commercial focus. So these are kind of the experimentations or the projects that get to explore through that, which I really enjoy doing. I think being in the collective, my favorite thing is waking up at 9 a.m. on a Sunday to do a Zoom call. Often like at 9 o'clock, waking up being like, oh shoot, on Zoom call. I think it's the other nice part is just I think what Sarah was saying, like this like ongoing long collaboration. I think there's like even when you're thinking about school or like a single project, you work with someone for like 4 weeks and then maybe never interact with them ever again. But something about working together over a very, very long time, you like can kind of reach the more like those deeper, more interesting solutions through kind of continuing to like weed together and work in that capacity.
I'm Christopher. I did not go to grad school with everybody. I was teaching at BU actually, and as was Kristen, and Kristen and I actually started collaborating on some of her work, which was a natural way for me to get involved in the collective. Uh, and I think we could also call it a collaborative. That people sounds cool as collective members. Sound almost like a band or something that's collective, but yeah, I think I always treat the projects just here's a little selection of my stuff, and I think technically like everything's a different medium maybe, and I think I'm always excited to see conceptually where we're going to take the shift each year, and just to have the comfort in the, as Josh was just saying, like the long, over a few years, I guess, geez, many years now. And just even if we have a disastrous Zoom meeting on Sunday morning, to just still be like, it's going to be okay, and we're going to land a ship somewhere. And just as grad students, especially those just like starting out in grad school, to just like understand that that's all part of the process, and like even if you had a review and you were like, man, that didn't go great, or or whatever, like everything went fine with it. In case you felt that way or something, it's all part of like landing the ship, whether it's in 8 years or 2 years, or 6 months. So and that can kind of just come through repetition, but hopefully you meet like faculty or uh, classmates that, as most of these folks were, that you can get comfortable just like making with and talking with and exchanging ideas with. So very, very, feel very grateful to be a part of this group.
This is me. Again, I'm back. I mostly work in textiles these days, or I guess for a while now. Um, I don't know if any of y'all students in the audience. I feel like I'm just talking to the collective because you're who I see, but are makers, but you might relate to the idea that I am often making things that are more functional in my day-to-day life, like sweaters or socks. And I really love being a part of Radius Collective because it gives me an excuse to make the things that are more artistic, less functional, like this sock sweater that I don't think I would wear on a regular day. Um, I love making art, to go in a gallery or to express something that, wouldn't necessarily exist in any other for any other reason than to be art. But it can be daunting to get started when you have to um, buy materials and delegate the time, and you don't know what's going to happen to it. Is it just going to end up in a drawer in your room? That doesn't make it not worth it, but it makes it really worthwhile to be in a collective where you know it's going somewhere. And it's also really exciting to have prompts because some years I'll have an idea and the prompt will direct it into something that is more solid. Or sometimes I don't have any ideas. I'm like, I really just want to keep knitting my sweater that I'm working on. But then the prompt will shake something loose that will make something really worthwhile. Um, if any of y'all were in my artist talk earlier in the semester where I talked about soft type, this quick brown fox piece in the middle of my slide here was a really early iteration of one of the typefaces that um, is on Google now. So thank you to Radius Collective.
Hi, I'm back. So really quick for context, because a lot of what you're seeing on the screen is paper. I'm a graphic designer. I currently work with um, an investment firm in Boston, so very different from anything I'm doing at Radius. I was born and raised in Kuwait, but I'm Indian by ethnicity. And so a lot of my work is informed by sort of this like multicultural upbringing that I had, and just the exposure to different cultural settings. And a huge part of um, being just a South Asian person living in the Middle East is you're surrounded by a lot of intricacy and ornate objects and patterns and things like that. So that has always been really inspiring to me and somehow made its way into my work. So with Radius Collective, I've mainly been a paper cut artist. It's one of my biggest creative passions. It's something that I kind of stumbled into um, 10 years ago, and I've been able to use paper cutting as a way to almost like a this sounds cheesy, but like a journal. Like it's a way of you like these prompts to me are a way of kind of processing life events or emotions or experiences, or stories that I'm reflecting on from family histories. And so a lot of the pieces are rooted in that, but they always kind of take shape in these nature-based forms. The really great thing about working on these pieces with Radius Collective is that there's a lot of encouragement to really go big and try different things. And I feel like with just this entire like space, I've had a lot of like courage to grow and try different things. My most recent piece is the one on the right, that I did for graphies, and it was the first time I ever created a lamp, and I kept wanting to create a lamp and I didn't know what it was going to be. But having the prompts that we have where they're so open-ended, but they're really conceptual, and we really take the time to talk through our concepts and what it means to us, and interpret it in our own ways, I think has just allowed for a lot of growth. So I'm really grateful to the collective for facilitating that, and just to be a part of these conversations. But like I said, a lot of my work it's all paper-based, it's very textural. I just like the idea of making bigger installations every time. So we'll see what the next one ends up being. Yeah.
Okay, this is me. Hi, I'm Molly. Okay, so I'm an artist and creative designer and computer, and my work often has to do with language, patterns, textures, typology. And yeah, I think what I really appreciate about being a Radius Collective is like someone said, kind of an extension of the thesis work that you might do in graduate school. I mean, you sort of coming back, like we have these prompts, but in a way they're just revealing whatever we were already interested in. And you can kind of see the continuity across everyone's work. It's just this extension of approaching these sort of topics or patterns or compulsions like through different lenses and just expanding it and making more interesting additions to your body of work every time. Yeah.
That's me. All right, I'm Kristen. I'm an interdisciplinary artist, and my work is really sort of rooted in ritual preservation, collection. And I think, in hearing how everybody's sort of referencing back to the collective and the value of it, for me, I tend to always have a lot of series of works and experiments in progress at all times. And I'm a big fan of conceptual frameworks and defining rules for all of my making, even if I'm not really sure what the output is going to be. And one of the things I do enjoy about being in the collective is that we'll define a framework that is usually quite flexible. And that allows me to sort of apply an additional framework to the existing frameworks I'm developing. And so it's usually a way of navigating a body of work or a collection of in progress things in a particular direction. And that's always exciting. And just more broadly, there's power in numbers. And that's kind of how I always describe the collective, especially within an academic space, because it's, especially when you're out of school, a lot of people struggle with not having that accountability or the structure and meeting rules, or you just want to get your work into exhibition spaces and you're like, I don't know how to do that. It's a lot easier to approach spaces or to ask for things if you're doing it with friends or if you just have a bunch of people, because it just gives more of a legitimacy to it. Yeah.
Thank you all. I just want to add on to Kristen's point about just the strength in numbers. I think it also, because we all have such different perspectives and ways of working, I think it allows us to really learn from each other and like take a lot of tips on, oh, how are you communicating with this? Like, I didn't know anything about reaching out to a gallery until I saw other members of our collective doing it. And, there's a lot of bouncing of ideas and advice and resources that have been really great. But I could go on about that for a while. So now that you all listened to our work and got to know us a little bit more, we'd love to open up the floor to you. If you have any questions or comments or thoughts or just want to chat, we'd love to hear from you.
I stopped sharing, but I can pull up slides again if people have questions about specific things.
You'll talk about coming up with frameworks that you work within. I was wondering if you could talk more about that.
Yeah, I'll start and everyone can jump in, but it's usually that like crazy brainstorm meeting at the beginning where like we start with usually something connected to a wine because that seems like the easiest starting point. And then we probably go back and forth like multiple times about different ways that we could take it, whether this should be like broadly about identity, broadly about this workshop that we're doing where it's kind of like vaguely in connected to distance, which is also kind of that mind connection. And then after that, it's just like, okay, like where are our constraints? So in this case, like let's all create prompts so that other people can make stuff. In previous times, it's like let's respond to someone else's work. Let's make sure that we're all utilizing this one media, those kind of constraints.
A lot of our constraints sort of start as a single word, and then we like branch out from that based on our individual interpretations of like, so if tangent is the theme of the show, how many ways in tangent, like what you think that their geometric connotation is like attention can go off on a tangent about something else. Like, so a lot of times we have some kind of starting point based in language, and then our projects take it in different direction.
To jump off that too, what helps select one of those things is like we each kind of see many different tentacles of like where it could go. We can often feel like on the Zoom call where there's a lot of energy behind something, and then that's generally the direction we'll go, because it feels like a fruitful, rich area that we can each explore, interpret in our own way, and feel kind of some passion behind it.
Even more simple definition is, and I feel like we spend a lot of time looking at the definition of words, right? Like it's just sitting there collectively in the browser, like, okay, wait, well, this word, when I look it up, like the definition is this, but there are all these offshoots. which become a lot more flexible. So it really is definitions.
Especially because it's all based on like connections to line. Like at one point it kind of started to feel like a little like a joke that we like just kept finding like line and then a line and then misaligned and whatever. But over time I think it just you realize that how much you can mine from one particular word or idea. So that's
So coming from an art historical perspective, a lot of what you're talking about is very much rooted in conceptual art of the late 60s. And I know this is a really big question, but what's your relationship to that history? Do you engage with that? Because I think that there's really rich ground for reading the work, if not speak.
I'm a huge fan of work from that time, and I mean, at the end of the day, I think we draw a lot of references from different makers, like even during critiques that will happen throughout the year when we meet and we're sharing work, we're often sharing resources, and of course, we're looking at a wide range of references, historical and contemporary. But I think it even more simply, just that idea of frameworks, instructions, the idea behind the thing being the sort of most important thing to kick off everything. It also becomes a really important way of thinking about all the other collateral and how we approach everything else. So yeah, but again, I think even today we saw a lot of references to conceptual artists, which I found very exciting. But that use of language and rules, I think, is a big one.
Just to piggyback on that, I think it's hard, we're in the cloud as a group, but like that's a great observation that we probably just take for granted. I think majority of the folks met in the graphic design graduate program, so like it's not like, and we've had painters and whoever else kind of infiltrate at times, but I think that's just it, like conceptually, that's kind of where we're coming from as a group, like, and it's kind of where design thinking meets fine art at times, which is definitely like rooted in that sort of 60s, early 70s movement. But so that's just like that's probably part of the DNA of the group, but like I would say like definitely from there's a lot of design thinking kind of that's behind like at least the initial structures of the prompts.
I have a question. I noticed visually on a lot of the exhibitions early on, the line was very prominent and kind of the treatment of everything we're doing. And it seems graphies is a departure from that. Is that something you're always thinking of? Like, okay, we've done enough of that, let's start exploring other directions.
Yeah. It is one of those that I like sort of forgot how we got to it a little bit. It came from a line mapping. There we go. Okay. So there was there's always it can always begins with that, like some way that we can connect the lines, and then like I kind of mentioned before, it just like the naming started to get like a little like we were like, how many different ways can we add lines to things? And I thought graphics was a really nice departure for that, and kind of even just like a more conceptual description of a line in that way.
Yeah, because
Tangent, our first departure.
Yeah, but tangent's still a little geometric.
how the zooms go.
Yeah.
We're close enough to.
Yeah.
Graffiti started from like cartography, and then we had like a few different graffiti words that had lines in them, but then we decided to split it up. So our graffiti and graffiti was looking at they had
Enthusiastically agreeing with each other. It's a lot of the process too.
I have a question for the group. What was the word? I know we were kind of calling this prompt or whatever, but what was the word like last summer when we were like sending stuff? So we started this process by like, oh, it's distance. Okay, so, but I just thought maybe it'd be interesting for people to hear that like the first part of this was to like send each other all a piece of analog mail. And that could be anything, I think. I missed that Zoom, unfortunately. But that kind of fizzled out. You know, it kind of, we kind of, most of us, I think, did it in some capacity, but it kind of didn't, we might revisit that at some point, but I just wanted to say, like, we tried it, and I think if we hadn't had the like experience of years of working together or the confidence of like figuring it out, I think maybe like something would have fizzled out, but like we kind of, this opportunity came up for us to kind of work here and like kind of change the perspective a little bit. And anyway, Cam and I on the Uber here, I think we were talking about that. Like, didn't this start with like mail?
Yeah.
That was interesting.
I didn't do
So you all did mail art, what you did?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting, and then y'all did distance theme thing. Oh gosh, very creative.
Well, because a lot of us are professors too, right? Like we're constantly looking for those opportunities to connect to our classes and like find prompts or like sort of mirroring in what we're working on and what we're trying to inspire or kind of evoke from our students too. I think originally like we wanted to try and like do this nail art thing where there would also be connection with students and students at our different institutions. But you know, those things kind of get away from me a little bit. And then yeah, so I still feel like that's an unfinished thread that we have hanging that we'll probably revisit at some point. But
Yeah, I feel like I would say things don't like nothing we've done. I don't think fizzles the right word. I think it's transformed it to an extent. No,
I think more connection to this than I thought we were going to be.
Because- yeah, no, because even with the mail art, which even I feel like mail art is like really loaded and implies one thing. It was really about having an exchange across distance. And so it was more about the sort of dialogue and the messaging and the idea of connecting points that just happened to take place in this slow mail sort of format. The formality of it, I think, was less so. But ultimately, I think the way we left our conversation was that we were just going to pause and give ourselves some distance from the project as we transitioned into this prompt, which really was an extension of it. But I think our plan is to go back to it again once we have time away from it to assess.
So when we were talking about mail arts, we were like, what attracted us when we were talking about it was like, we're so attached to digital screens right now, and mail art is very much like an analog lost art form. Like, if you think about it, how many letters or things that you send in your daily life, it's not much. So for us, it was like a very refreshing concept to think about and explore, and we'll probably come back to it, especially in this age of AI and digital. I think it's something we can circle back to.
I was gonna say, and the other thing, like with any of these prompts, I try to use it just as like a framework for my own work. So at the time I was working on this, well, I still am, this like watercolor typography exploration. And it was a really nice sort of deadline to be like, I'm gonna make some of these that I can put in envelopes and send to my friends. And it's just like a different feeling. You're making something for something instead. So in that way, like it was still really helpful for my process.
I think what's kind of interesting, and it's obviously interesting because we're talking about it a lot, but it's that part of this was that we couldn't decide because we had two interesting ways we could take this. It was like, you know, distance in its different forms, but also slowness and like a reaction to, you know, the speed of digital interaction. And so I think that's kind of cool that we're not really done. After we get through this one, there's like sort of more to evolve to. Which, yeah, that's, you know, the nice thing about working together for so long, is that we don't have to not think about it.
Okay. Thank you all for coming all the way to Texas. Really appreciate it.